Don't let these tears fool you. There's all dog around this mug. I'm good.
Hey, what's going on, Who Dat Nation? It is yours truly, TJ Jones. And yes, I am the host of the State of the Saints podcast. Thank you so much for checking out the State of the Saints podcast, where we talk New Orleans Saints. On this edition, we have a special guest with us here on the State of the Saints podcast. I'm pretty sure a lot of you know him from his channel, Who Dat Confessional, breaking down New Orleans Saints and also giving us a different perspective on the black and gold. One of the OGs of the YouTube world when it comes to covering the New Orleans Saints. I'm referring to Mr. Deuce Windham of Who Dat Confessional. Deuce, how you doing?
Doing well, man. Thanks for having me. Call me the OG, man. I don't know. I just turned 34 and you're making me feel old, but thanks.
Hey, man, I mean, it's the truth, man. You've been doing this for a very long time, man. I guess that would probably be a good place to start. Like, for those that, I mean,
I don't even know if I want to think about it like that, man, because like I remember when I started doing this and then I stopped it and then I came back.
Right.
So it really has been a minute. But yeah, it's been probably doing it 7 years now?
Man,
something like that.
I remember when I remember when I first like started doing podcasts. You were like the first one I saw. And like I could just remember like it seemed like it was you and then everybody else like started to come along. I guess you probably was the person that really gave a lot of people confidence. I mean, including myself, to be able to get behind the microphone and in front of the camera here and do this. So I appreciate it, man. From one podcaster to another, man, you definitely created a lot of YouTubers and gave them a lot of confidence to start this thing. So I just want to give you flowers while you're here, man. But
it's been kind of wild actually, because you say that, and I think I was like the first Saints YouTube channel to hit 10K.
Mm-hmm.
And I went and focused on the gaming side of things just because, COVID killed my athletic job.
Yeah.
I worked with the Athletic. COVID killed that. I mean, I was just going to transition. And then this year got a couple opportunities like with Bleacher Report. Like, hey, let's jump back in. And even though the podcast has stayed on, it's kind of cool because then I'm like, all right, well, State of the Saints is on YouTube now.
Yeah.
Nick took my advice and finally got on YouTube. Ross Jackson put Locked On Saints on YouTube.
On the map.
You got First Down Saints with Jaden.
Mm-hmm.
So it's actually pretty dope to see because for a long time there was like, the only thing you could find on Saints YouTube was highlight, and that's it.
Yep.
And I'm not saying I don't enjoy players, but I hate highlights.
Yeah.
I hate highlights. I mean, they're great to watch, like if you just need to get hyped for the season, but they don't teach you anything.
Right.
So it's good to see everybody's got a platform now.
Yeah, no doubt about it, man. And I appreciate your time. And I just want to talk a little bit about the New Orleans Saints. I mean, man, I'm pretty sure over there on your channel, a lot of people that watch that your podcast, and everybody's frustrated right now because the New Orleans Saints aren't what we envisioned at the beginning of the season. We expected better results. A lot of people probably felt we would have had a better record as far as the Saints at this particular time. But let's go ahead and start with some of the key issues that people have been talking about, and that's offensive coordinator Pete Carmichael. Now, I checked out Who Dat Confessional a couple episodes ago, and I remember you were talking a little bit about the play schemes. I think that you mentioned a little bit about it's not so much the plays. The plays are more modernized. It's an issue with Pete Carmichael.
I would actually say it's a little bit of both. Remember I made a tweet on what the site formerly known as Twitter that, one thing about that I've seen post a lot is they'll talk about Pete Carmichael's offense and they're like, well, he's running a dated system like the West Coast. And I'm like, well, San Fran runs a West Coast offense, and the team that just beat you in the Houston Texans runs a West Coast offense, but it's the style that he's running it with. Like Nick Underhill do that article talking about the actual use of motion, everything. And then, Ross was talking to him, the percentage of how often the Saints use things like play action, motion hasn't changed. So it's just one of those things where when you look around the league, you see the Miami Dolphins, you see the San Francisco 49ers, and you see what these offenses are doing in the modern NFL is, and the NFL goes through seasons. In the early 2000s, you're still old enough to remember when the spread hit the pros and it was a real big deal.
Right.
So it all kind of goes through a cycle. And right now, because of just how defenses are designed, motion can be a real big killer and everything, especially pre-snap motion, and just not seeing them do a lot of it. So you got this mix of what a lot of people would call bad play calls during the game, like against the Texans. They called 4 verts. Final 4 plays, 3 of them were 4 verts. Same play, same alignment, 3-by-1 to the right, identical. Now they made like a slight change here and they're like, okay, well, we'll put, because the first one, Michael Thomas was on the right side. Then the last 2, he was on the left. I'm sorry, that's not enough to fool the defense, right? So again, I'm not one of those guys who works as an analyst and I've told people before, I trained as a scout. Yeah, I've gotten to work with the Saints and Tennessee Titans, stuff like that. But I'm nowhere near qualified to call plays on an offense, especially at the NFL level. And to me, that's kind of the point, though, because if I can see it and you can see it and a regular fan can be like, wait, didn't we just see that play literally 2 plays ago?
Right.
That's what you call a tendency in the NFL. And once the NFL defense sees that, you're not going to have success. So it's not only the modernization thing, it's also like when you're actually calling it situationally, just a lot of bad plays. And, all this has spurned into, and you've seen it on social media where then it starts arguing over, well, should we have Jameis Winston or Derek Carr? Should we, and my opinion on that is just like, look, it doesn't matter because I've always believed that Derek Carr is a mid-tier quarterback. With a great play caller, he can be really good, maybe top 10. With a bad play caller, he's going to look terrible. I don't think if you put Jameis Winston in, if you brought back Andy Dalton, it doesn't matter. And then like the whole argument over the money contract. I don't care who got paid what. That's on Mickey Loomis. Go fire Mickey Loomis if you want to gripe about that one. For me, it comes down to on the field. What's the problem? And I just don't think Pete Carmichael's been good. We've got 23 games now, Pete Carmichael. And in that span, they have scored on 31% of the drives with 3 different quarterbacks, right? They have scored 30 points twice. That's 8% of your games. So I just think that everything that we kind of get caught in the weeds on is sure, those are issues. Like Derek Carr's not playing great, but is he the main problem? I think anytime that you have an issue, you want to go to the main person. I think the main person right now is Pete Carmichael.
I definitely agree with the Pete Carmichael sentiment that you just mentioned. But let me ask you this. Okay, so we all know that Pete Carmichael originally didn't want this position, right? I mean, he turned it down, and of course, like Mickey Loomis, Dennis Allen came to him again and asked him to do it. Do you think that he ended up doing it because technically his back was against the wall, Deuce? Because think about this, man. We know that the biggest no-no in football is quitting, right? So do you think that had any validity behind him deciding to become the OC?
I mean, maybe there could be like a loyalty factor there because he's been there 15 years. I mean, I really can't say. I'm one of those that maybe I'm not hot takey enough. I don't like to make an opinion on something that I can't see. So I really don't know. I mean, I can tell you that I don't side on the line of people who just like want to straight fire him and they'll say that he's just trash. I mean, there's no way that Drew Brees, Sean Payton, et cetera, keep him around for 15 years and he doesn't know what he's doing in something. And I think what he does well is game planning, as in like he can see the Jacksonville Jaguars 4 days ahead and he knows how to go after them. It's actually in the game where everything is changing at 50 times a second. And you got to adjust really, really quickly. I don't think he just operates well under pressure. And sometimes that's just how a person is, and not even a football thing. Like in real life, some people work really well under pressure and some don't. Right. And I just think that he's one of those people that a high pressure situation hits and he freaks out. I think you look at the Texans game first half, play calling's not bad. There's some things that I take an issue with, and I've made that clear, like the double mesh pattern. We got 2 people running the same route right on top of each other. I don't like that. But generally speaking, the offense moved well-ish, right? You have problems with the offensive line, but then you get into these like red zone opportunities, high pressure, into the game, high pressure, and it just all falls apart. And, there can be failings with offensive line, Derek Carr, Chris Olave, whatever. But I just think that for him, I think that's a struggle point. And I do kind of point it back to Mickey Loomis because we know Eric Bieniemy was in the building. We know Doug Peterson was in the building, and they let him go. And you better be very confident that Pete Carmichael was fixing his mistakes from last year to do that. And it ain't happened. Like, it doesn't matter how you slice it. To me, in the past 2 years, you've basically replaced everything you said was a problem. You said wide receivers were not good enough. You got new ones. Chris Olave is new one. Rashid Shaheed he's turned into a very good number 3 option. Michael Thomas has come back. He's a very good option. He's not 2019, but he's still good.
Right.
You know, you drafted into the offensive line. You went and got Derek Carr. You made all these changes, yet you got the same thing, technically a little bit worse. At what point do we just sit there and go, hey, Pete, you ain't getting cut, but you're not getting the play calls anymore?
Yeah. You know, dudes, I'm a real big fan of wrestling. And one story that I paid attention to growing up was this producer named Vince Russo. Vince Russo was the mastermind behind what they call the Attitude Era, with, you know, was the golden part of wrestling. And he ended up getting a promotion to WCW because of his work that he did in WWF at the time. And he ended up running WCW into the ground because he didn't have Vince McMahon as his buffer. You know, sometimes you need that guy that you can run ideas off. You probably have good ideas, but you need somebody to kind of keep you on a straight and narrow. And I feel like when it comes to Pete Carmichael, that's probably what he needs. He's probably one of those guys that's really, really knowledgeable about what he's doing, but he still needs somebody to kind of, you know, reel him in a little bit or help him see things from a different angle. I feel like I got to give Pete Carmichael respect in this regard. He knew what he wasn't capable of doing, and he was willing to give it opportunity, but he just didn't want to do it. So, I mean, I give him respect in that regard, but I just feel like the Sean Payton not being there kind of affects him when it comes to like some of the decision making. I think it was a collaboration. Do you think so? I mean, am I off course?
I mean, I think Sean Payton is the mastermind. I mean, look, I don't think that Denver's doing great, but I mean, there's a reason that Russell Wilson's completion percentage has gone up 7% from last year. His TD percentage has doubled. Sean Payton he's that level of offensive guy. I mean, do I think that helped Pete? Absolutely. But I actually think it kind of goes back to what you were just saying. I love your analogy because to me, it doesn't matter. And the reason it doesn't matter is he still chose to do the job. Right. So regardless of why you were good or why you're not, even if you didn't want to be there, didn't want to be there, you still decided at the end of the day, you signed your name on a contract. So you said, I'll do it. Right. Whether or not you wanted to, you still said, so I'm going to judge you based on being an offensive play call.
Right.
Do I agree with you that there's other things that kind of really help that? Absolutely. But, you know, it's kind of like what you just said. You chose to go to the WCW and run it into the ground. That was on you. By the way, if you haven't watched The Wrestlers, I actually just watched the Wrestler series on Netflix. Actually pretty good.
Man. Hey, man, awesome,
man. Ohio Valley Wrestling. Shout out to
yeah.
Ohio Valley. I hope y'all are selling out shows now.
Hey,
good
absolutely. Hey, man, a lot of great wrestlers came from Ohio Valley, man.
Yeah.
But I think when it comes like to Pete Carmichael, I think we have a large enough sample size to know what he is and who he is as a play caller, and you know how he understands the ebbs and flows of the game. What's next, Deuce? You know, like where do we go from here?
I think I'm gonna give a shout out to the Jameis Winston stands real quick because I don't feel like Jameis ever got a 100% fair shake under Carmichael NDA, and that is what it is at this point. Like. It's not that I don't support Jameis. I just know that the franchise is not going to go backwards, right? You're not going to pay a guy $150 and be like, you know what? Maybe Jameis deserves another chance. It's not going to happen. No. So like when I look at it, I go, how much time do you give that person? So you gave Jameis basically 6 games and an injury before you're like, we're done, right? It's clearly not going to work. Yeah. You know, you gave Andy Dalton, you know, basically a little bit more than half a season. You're like, hey, you're old. You can make okay plays, but you're not good enough. Goes back to what I just said. You gave 23 games to Pete Carmichael so far.
All right.
23. And in 54% of those games, they're not even scoring 20-plus points.
Yeah.
So I think Pete Carmichael is still an asset to this team on the staff.
Yeah.
But what I believe needs to happen is, you know, it's the famous Maya Angelou quote. When somebody shows you who they are, believe them. I think Pete is a good offensive mind. I've been very clear. Like, even though I don't want him calling plays, say right now, if you combine me, you, Nick, every other podcaster in Saints Nation together, we still don't have as much offensive knowledge of an NFL system as Pete does.
Yep.
But that doesn't make you a great play caller. I think what you have is you have Ronald Curry in-house, who you have been training for years back to the Payton era to be this guy. Yep. You made him the wide receivers coach, then you made him the quarterback coach, and then you made him the passing game coordinator. He's taking the same path to become an offensive coordinator of what you just have the Carolina Panthers, where Frank Reich is now handing over play calling duties. Yep. I think the only realistic option you have is the guy that you let call plays in the preseason with Ronald Curry. And to be clear, I'm not sitting here saying that Ronald Curry is going to come in and be amazing.
Yep.
I'm just simply saying, you know what you have in Pete. You don't know what you have in the guy that you've raised up here, and you still believe you're a playoff team. Well, if you know that Pete's not it, you got to try something. And if you were willing to move off of, Jameis Winston after X amount of time, what's that X amount of time for Pete Carmichael?
That's a good point. And I think about this too, when people talk about, giving Ronald Curry an opportunity, I see some Saints fans out there saying, well, we need somebody with experience. I mean, if you think about it, most OCs, like they get head coaching jobs or defensive coordinators, I mean, they give them an opportunity. I mean, the coach that we've come to love and admire was given an opportunity. This was Sean Payton's first coaching job ever. So I'm like, why in the world would, you take that into consideration? I mean, you think about Matt LaFleur, Sean McVay, Kevin O'Connell, even though they're having a rough time out there in Minnesota right now, all these guys were given opportunities. And you got to, I mean, who knows? You might fall flat on your face and you might excel at it. But I do think that Ronald Curry, him being on the staff, him having experience calling some plays in preseason, like you gave him opportunity. Why not seeing where it can go? I mean, you already said it. 2 times you scored 30 points in 2 seasons.
23 games, yeah.
I mean, come on. Like, only way you can go is up from there, right? So how about giving them an opportunity, at least until the season over, where you can decide what you want to do going forward. But speaking of which, I know you also did evaluation on the game. Chris Olave, man. Over the last couple of weeks, Chris Olave has been showing some unusual behavior, man. Couple routes, not really giving it his all, kind of pouting on the sidelines a little bit, very, very frustrated to a point where he said even his family had to kind of,
I mean, AK called him out.
Yeah.
Right?
So, I don't know, man. What are your thoughts on Chris Olave, man? What's happening here?
One, I think Chris Olave, this goes back to the styles of people. And like the older you get, here's me being the OG old head right now. The older you get, the more you learn there's different types of people. Some people are very passionate people. Some people are more stoic, right? Not going to show a ton of emotion. I think Olave is just very passionate. And like a lot of these young guys, and like you get my age, 34, you realize how different, like at 20, yeah, you're an adult, but you're still kind of a child. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And Chris Olave is coming from you run into this in basket. It's not just an NFL thing. You run this to every sport, basketball, hockey, whatever. This man is used to winning at every level. And he is used to being the best guy. I mean, I know that he shared the field with Wilson in Ohio State and everything, but the point I'm making is like he is used to not having the problems the Saints are currently having, right? And he's used to, like, when he wants the ball, he's going to get the ball. And again, he shared the field with another great wide receiver. So I'm not trying to say that he's just this selfish diva. I'm not doing the Brandon Cooks 2.0 thing, but I am saying that he's frustrated and he's very passionate about playing this game. And being a young man, that passion can sometimes make you make stupid decisions. And yeah, I mean, there are definitely plays that he's taking some reps off. Now, do I want to like trade him and get rid of him? No, not at all. I mean, dude has the potential to be a top 3, top 5 wide receiver in this league. You don't just like, oh man, he's a little sour, let's get rid of him, right? You want to make sure that you give him the opportunity. And there are ways that you can work with those type of personalities. It's not often I'll quote Aaron Rodgers, but he actually was just talking about this on Pat McAfee's show, I think earlier this week. And he was talking about working with some of the older guys when he was in Green Bay, like Jordan Nelson. It's like, look, with some of those types of players, you need to get them the ball early, get them invested in the game immediately. And I agree to that to an extent. Like, I'm not saying that Chris Olave needs to be force-fed balls, but he was targeted one time in the first quarter. And it's also part of what I showed on like social media today. I'm not sure when you ended up recording this, but the week of 10-17 or whatever, I talk about, look, first quarter, he's taking some plays off. He's not finishing routes and he's not completely sure of some of the stuff, but you go into the game, once he starts getting some receptions, he looks crispy, right? So he might be one of those guys, just the style that he is. Yes, you do need to mature a little bit, and every play needs 100% effort, even if it's not going to you. Sell the route, man. If you got to run 35 yards downfield, you're running a 15-yard post and you got to continue it out to the end zone, then continue it out to the damn end zone. But I also think that it kind of gets blown up. The reason it frustrates me is because this is how I see this team. I love Michael Thomas, but he's no longer Michael Thomas, right? He's still doing what he's doing better than I thought he would, because he's on pace for about 900,000 yards, but he's not Michael Thomas from when he set NFL records, right? Derek Carr, as much as I think that he fits the system really good, is a mid-tier quarterback. That's not elite. and you got a play caller talking about being subpar. The only like young talent you have that can elevate this team is Chris Olave. Like he's the only one that fits that category. Like Kendre Miller might be that, but he's sitting behind a veteran that's extremely good still in Alvin Kamara, but Alvin Kamara is no longer that guy. Alvin Kamara's taken on a fantastic leadership role. The point I'm making is great players can elevate bad play in other players. Right. Chris Olave is that guy. So the expectation is he needs to be better. And, I can understand why that can suck to kind of put that pressure on him. But at the same time, he's the guy. Like, you invested in him. You saw what he did as a rookie, second in rookie of the year voting and all this other stuff. He's got to live up to that now. And if he wants to be the star that he's capable of being, he can't have a route that he takes, runs 80%. He just can't.
Yes. That's my whole point when I talk about Chris Olave. Like, dudes, I know people, they get upset with me when I say these things about, I question him being the number one guy because I watched a lot of football growing up. You're 34, I'm 37. You watched a lot of football in your life. You think about some of the greats, like the Jerry Rice, the Chris Carters, T.O.s, Randy Moss. Like, these guys were, like, dedicated to the craft. And I don't want to say what Randy Moss is. He kind of like, different story. But when it comes to, like, Jerry Rice, these guys didn't give up on plays. They didn't quit. Like, they may not have been the fastest or the strongest, but you couldn't tell them that. And I just feel like when somebody calls you a number one, like you supposed to check
There's an expectation.
all the boxes, Deuce. Like I feel like the word GOAT is given too easily now. Like if you take the top off the defense 2 games in a row, oh, he the GOAT. How about some consistency? How about being that leader? How about the guy showing up early and leaving late? Like, these are the type of things I feel like are the makings of a number one. And I feel like
there's a mentality to it.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
And I'll be clear, just because of what he's doing now doesn't mean I don't think he can't have that mentality, right? It's just he's got to get there. And it's also a lot easier to get that mentality when you're winning, right?
Oh, yeah.
Now, I'm not trying to do like any revisionist history of Michael Thomas because we know Michael Thomas has that dog mentality.
Yeah.
Michael Thomas was able to come into a building and be a dog, right? Chris Olave is not able to come into a building and be a dog. His rookie year, he's got 2 different starting quarterbacks, and neither did they believe in and invest in to go to another year. Then you have Michael Thomas returning, and he goes and recruits Derek Carr, so you're hoping things will get better, and then what do you find the first 6 games of the season? It's the same stuff all over again. So I understand why he's frustrated. Like, I don't want to lack empathy for Chris Olave, but at the same time, if you are wanting to be, and keep in mind that, like, another reason I'm harsh on him, if you go watch the All-22, you can't always see this in broadcast. He can be the third read on a route. This man's got his arm up being greedy, trying to call for balls when it's not even his play. That's fine if you're doing exactly what we're talking about. Like, if you have that dog and you're being clutch and you're not taking plays off, I don't care if you're calling for the ball when you're read number 3 or read number 4. But when you're not giving that same effort when it's not your play, then I'm sitting there like, dude, put your hand down. Like, right? And again, none of this is to besmirch his character. I'm simply saying that as a young guy, he's got to see the situation mature a little bit and realize that everybody's relying on him, even though he's young and even though it's the second year. He's one of the few people that can truly take this offense to another level. Because it's not Pete Carmichael. No offense, Pete. I never believed it was Derek Carr, even though I think Derek Carr can be a really good quarterback here. It's the difference between, they teach you this in scouting. When you look for elite guys, an elite guy is a player that you can win because of, and then a good player is a player that you can win with. Derek Carr is a quarterback you can win with.
Right.
Chris Olave has the potential to be a guy that you can win because of. And until he reaches that level, you're going to have these conversations come up because nobody's saying this about Rashid Shaheed, right? Because he's not a first-round pick. He's not busting off 1,000 yards his rookie year. Rashid Shaheed's a dude you're watching develop and going, damn, look at that guy. You're proud of him because he's overachieving. No offense, Shaheed, but you are. You're overachieving your expectation. Chris Olave is not overachieving his expectation, and that's what it comes down to. Chris Olave, as a talent, is more talented than Michael Thomas right now, Rashid Shaheed, and everybody else on that team. That doesn't mean that he's playing to his talent level. And that's why you'll have people like me frustrated at him and even, his family coming at him and AK, because he truly has the potential to be that level of special. I just want him to be that level of special.
Yeah. I just have a hard time, like, just giving somebody the baton. Like, I feel like you got to earn that thing, in my opinion. Like, it can't, like, he has all the tools to be great, but I'm not just going to give it to you. Like, you had a great college career, but that doesn't mean anything in the National Football League. You have to rise to the occasion and you have to take it. And I just think that sometimes when we want him to take it. It just seems like, he's reluctant to do so. So I think I agree. He has unlimited potential, but he cannot be pouting on the sidelines. He cannot just be giving up on plays because guys can see that. And, they're going to question your effort. And the worst thing that you can do is lose the respect of your teammates and feel like they can't count on you in certain situations. My next question is about the offensive line. Since we talk about other achievement here, the offensive line, my goodness. What is going on? Deuce with the offensive line. It just seems like no matter what type of rotation they have out there, guys are getting beat. I think I seen a statistic. I want to say it came from T-Bob and Jacob Hester. They were talking about one. I want to say it was one of the offensive line. I can't think of it, but his PFF grade was so low. It basically said that he was getting beat 4 out of 5. Reps going up against a defensive lineman. That is not very good. What is going on with the offensive line? How have they regressed so much? And what can they do to fix this, man?
I don't think Thursday is going to be a good opportunity because Ramchek's going to miss that game with a concussion.
All right.
And you've also got Landon Young out. So that right side is very scary at the moment. I mean, there's a mix of things that go into that. Now, I'll admit, and everybody who follows my content knows this, I don't put any value into PFF grading, especially offensive line. Go check out guys like LaCharles Bentley, Coach Mouse, Duke Manyweather, Brandon Thorne, give you much better, well-rounded opinion on how O-line is playing. But I think, one, it comes down to communication, which I know they've been harping on a lot. There's actually a play. If you look at the 4th down call that we complained about that went to AK, right?
All right.
The play before that, there's a clear miscommunication between Max Garcia at left guard and Trevor Penning, and one of the DENs actually gets no block. They both split, opens up like Moses had a stick and split the C. And AK has a TFL, which leads to that big 4th down they had to go for. So communication is a big issue on it. And then you also just have a cohesion issue where you're running into so many injuries that guys aren't playing next to each other and they don't have that trust. There's, for example, when you play offensive line, there's a technique they teach you in pass pro called a drag arm, where if I'm on a slide protection or a split protection, my goal is to guard the gap here, but I leave my left arm out or my right arm out because I got to feel that backside. And that way, if there's something that comes in that area, I need to, protect somebody else, I can switch to it. That only is really effective when you have a rapport with your fellow offensive lineman. Like, you can only get to those levels when you've played together, you're working well together. And the thing is, you've been shuffling the left tackle spot. You're shuffling the left guard spot. You got an injury now at the right tackle spot. You had to move Cesar Ruiz to right tackle. You got a lot of things happening here. You got Trevor Penning playing very up and very down. Like, he's had some games where he definitely had better reps at pass pro. I think the biggest reason he's gotten benched is he is not a good outside zone blocker. The reason that's important is that's what AK does so damn well.
Right.
Like, AK is an outside, inside zone, split zone runner. That's what he wants to do. And even though I would argue Trevor Penning has become better at pass protection at a left tackle than James Hurst, if your best running back is like the only thing that you can really rely on to consistently move the yards, and dude, he's been doing pretty well 2 games now, AK, in terms of moving the ball.
Right.
You probably want to give him the offensive lineman that he kind of needs, but all that shuffling mixed in with communication issues and then mixed in with the play calls has made this offensive line an issue from what you've seen before. And I'm curious if they do plan to go for Ronald Curry, which I honestly do think that is getting a little bit of traction. I don't take that as a breaking news thing, but I can tell you that the facility is also, and I mentioned this on Twitter, looking at Carmichael, and they're not oblivious to the fact. Now, one thing I respect about New Orleans, this goes in the Sean Payton era, they don't throw each other under the bus, right? So I can, Nick can, you can, it doesn't matter who goes and asks. Nobody's going to go and be like, yeah, Carmichael is doing trash right now.
Right.
And we're thinking about benching him. They're not going to do it. And I'm glad they don't, because that's how you know that room is dysfunctional. Yep. So the moment that happens, y'all go ahead and write it. No playoffs happening. That's just not going to be a thing. But I do know that he's under scrutiny right now. And unless he just dominates the Jaguars and shows a real change, we're probably going to look at moving things. And when that gets moved, then it actually falls on Ronald Curry to also look at that offensive line situation and try to simplify things. Because one thing that will happen if you have a play caller switch is things will get simplified.
Yeah.
They have to. It'll be Ronald Curry's first time. That means that we got to simplify our blocking calls. We got to simplify our pass protections. We got to simplify the actual routes we run and even the running game. So hopefully if they do transition, you'll see a kind of a renewed focus on making that work. But it's kind of like we talked about, man. We can talk about Pete Carmichael all we want, but the offense is the exact opposite of the defense. Fundamentally, this defense is amazing at every level, right? Communication is not a problem on this defense. In terms of like little things, gap integrity, rushing the back, all of it is good. The exact opposite on the offensive side. There's miscommunication everywhere. Not everybody knows what play they need to do. Not everybody knows their role in any given situation. So hopefully simplifying everything and giving a unified direction brings that, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that change is actually needed. I didn't expect, like, based on how they played against Houston, I mean, the week is a short week, so anybody expected some changes to happen this week. I just think that was wishful thinking. I'm looking at maybe the game versus the Colts because you got a little bit of some extra rest there. You got 10 days to actually, before your next game. So you get opportunity to kind of figure some things out. And I just think that would be the move. I don't care at this particular point, dudes. Like, even if he goes out there and they put up 30 points, I still feel like it's too much of a mixed bag here. Like, I feel like that you still need some level of consistency because my problem is I feel like they're a little bit more reactionary versus being progressive. Like, I feel like when the scrutiny starts to come out and people want some heads to roll, that's when everybody kind of get together and they executing and they putting up points. But then when everybody's quiet, what are you doing then? And I just feel like it's too much of a mixed bag. So I just think maybe after this game, looking at someone like Ronald Curry, giving him an opportunity to call the plays before it's too late. I mean, the best thing you have going for you right now is the South is terrible. Like everybody lost Sunday. So you're still right where you were at the beginning of the game versus the Texans. So that's the way
I'll be honest, TJ. And again, I'm not just trying to harp on Carmichael. I know I've done it a lot, but I'm not. I think, one, you can't do much worse. I mean, you just scored 13 points. I mean, you're not going to do much worse than that. You're just not. And then two, one of the things that I've gotten into with Saints fans, like they'll just say just straight fire him. And like, I don't believe that Drew Brees and Sean Payton lied for a decade, right? Yeah. I do believe that Pete Carmichael is really good at some aspects of his job. Yeah. And if you gave the play call to somebody else, that actually lets him go back to doing what he was apparently so good at, right? Yeah. So my hope is that if that were to be the case, even if it was something simple where they put Ronald Curry up at the top, like up in the box, he's calling plays and Pete's down there at the bottom going through a lot of things with the players or vice versa, I think a change is needed. And if you're willing to bench Trevor Penny because you believe that you can still win football games, then you got to bench your OC if he's not doing well. Yeah. So whatever it looks like format-wise, this team needs to make a change because they believe they're a playoff team and they are in a division that is completely up in the air where no offense in this division is good. They're all a mixed bag. And every defense in this division is solid to really good. Like Atlanta's defense is the best part of their team. John Robinson came in, had like that great first game, and he's been kind of like mid the rest because the rest of the offense is mid, and it's tough for a running back to elevate you like that. Right. You obviously see that the Panthers haven't won a game, and you got a rookie. And then you got Baker Mayfield, who, look, Baker's going to pop off some games, and he's going to look terrible in another game because that's what Baker is. Guess what? He's a mid-tier quarterback, just like Derek Carr. That's how it's going to work. So it's completely open. The Saints could lose 3 more games and still be in the thick of this division because that's a division. So, there's who ran that poll? I think it was Jono. I like to call him Jono just to bug him. But Jono actually ran a poll. What would you rather have, Saints fans, make the playoffs and keep things how they are?